I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is Currents.
A priest, his mother, and a promise kept.
And I look at Jesus and I say to him, if my mother doesn't die today, I will become a priest.
We'll visit a house in Brooklyn unlike any other.
Some guys really have been thinking about priesthood for a long time, and now they're coming and they're saying, I really think that this might be where I'm called to be.
And a very special eyewitness, Bishop DiMarzio.
To be a priest in today's world is no different than it's been over the centuries. The priest's job is to bring people to God.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Well, as we head toward the end of 2009, can you believe it?
No.
Oh my goodness. We want to take a look back at the first half of this year for priests. It's the special year dedicated to these men who've dedicated their lives to the priesthood, and it continues through June of 2010. And tonight we'll take a close look at these men.
We'll also talk to an author who's written a book with advice for men who are on their way to being ordained but may still have a few questions. But we start off tonight with a story of a popular Brooklyn priest who took over as pastor of an East Flatbush parish from a popular bishop in the diocese.
Father Jean-Miguel Auguste was installed as pastor of St. Jerome's Parish this past June, and his journey to the priesthood all started with a promise.
And Father Miguel talks about that promise and his journey as tonight's first eyewitness.
Some people are baptized, confirmed, but they don't really know that God is real because they have no personal experience. I was in high school when my mother got sick. The day she was going to surgery, I went to church. And I look at Jesus and I say to him, if you save her, if my mother doesn't die today, I will become a priest. She recovered from the surgery. And she was fine. And I forgot about the promise I made. I tried to play a game with him. I say, it's not fair, God. You know, it's her life, it's not my life. But my mother got sick again. The cancer was back. And then I remember 10 years ago that I made a promise to God. I say, God, I'm back to confirm my promise to you. I want to be a priest. God save my mother. I don't want her to die now. Without my mother receiving any treatment, any medication, the cancer began to shrink. And I went to the priest of my town and I said, I want to be a priest. He said to me, you? You want to be a priest? Not you. I say, Father, it's not about me. It's about my mother. My mother is 87. She just turned 87 last Monday, and she's still alive. So since then, she has never been sick. Never been sick. I've surrendered everything. Ask me if it was easy? No. If anyone said to you, it is easy to give up things, to follow Jesus, it's not true. But I'm happy. Because I've come to believe that everything is about love. I love my mother, and I was willing to give my life for her. And to some extent, I gave my life for her.
I love that story. Well, we mentioned earlier that Father Miguel took over as pastor of St. Jerome's from a popular bishop in the diocese.
Right, that bishop is Auxiliary Bishop Guy Sanseric, who retired as pastor of St. Jerome's earlier this year, but still keeps busy in his role as bishop and priest. Bishop Guy has been on Currents many times here over the last few months.
Sure has. Well, stay tuned. There's much more of this special edition of Currents straight ahead.
When we return, a house where men can figure out if they have a calling.
The house, I think, provides an opportunity to help a guy get from point A to point B.
Welcome back. I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. We continue now with the special edition of Currents dedicated to the priesthood.
And men who think they may want to dedicate their lives to the priesthood have a unique opportunity to do so here in Brooklyn.
They sure do. In the neighborhood of Cypress Hills stands a house where men can live and figure out if they're actually meant to be priests. And they do this all the while going about their daily lives.
It's called the John Paul II House of Discernment, and we had a chance to send our cameras over just a couple of months ago.
Monsignor Keene was the one who suggested that we call it the Pope John Paul II House of Discernment, and when he mentioned that, I think it was just like an obvious choice, because Pope John Paul II, may he rest in peace, was such a strong, some people call him a vocation director for the world. His example, and his example especially of living priesthood, inspired so many young men. The guys that come to the house receive an invitation from somebody, usually another priest, a priest in their parish. We have things like Project Andrew, where it's a dinner with the bishop that we have about every other month. Some of them we host here in the house. When a guy might express an interest in priesthood to a priest in his parish, the priest might give him my number. I'll invite him to come here to the house. We have 5 guys living here at the moment. They have their lives. They're in school, they're working, they have their families, they have their friends. We ask a guy who's coming here because he's seriously discerning priesthood. He's not in a relationship, he's not dating. If that were to happen, then he could, make another arrangement, and he would have to move, he would move on. But this is their home. Their families are welcome anytime. We say basically a year. It could be a year and a half. It could be 2 years. A guy wouldn't be here for more than 2 years, really, because by that time, it should be enough time to either discern that I'm not being called to priesthood and kind of go on with one's life, or I do feel that I'm being called for priesthood, and now, while he's here, he can begin the application process to the seminary. The house, I think, provides an opportunity to help a guy get from point A to point B. If point A is thinking about priesthood or discerning the call, and point B is entering the seminary, there's a sense, when you enter the seminary, one sense of leaving everything behind. It's a big change in somebody's life. Coming here to the House of Discernment, they can continue going to school where they're going to school, or working where they're working. But they have a regular prayer life. They have the support of the community. When they live here, this is their home. They have their room, and that's where they live. And there's one meal a day. We have somebody who, thanks be to God, cooks a meal a day for us. So, but breakfast and lunch is kind of on their own. Again, we pray together 3 times a day. I meet with the guys once a month, kind of to talk about where they're at in their discernment process. And if they're interested in applying to the seminary, we begin that application. I work with them in that process. The first thing that strikes me, I guess, about the guys that I meet, is probably different with each guy. There's some interest, question, something is going on in his life in terms of his relationship with the Lord. Maybe that's something that's similar for all of the guys, but it's expressed, in a unique way in each guy. And some guys really have been thinking about priesthood for a long time, and now they're coming and they're saying, I really think that this might be where I'm called to be, and what do I have to do? Where do I have to go? Other guys, it's just completely something that's just a possibility, and they may not even be sure why they're thinking about it, or why they're coming to a holy hour here, or trying to find out more about the priesthood, but they feel somehow that they're receiving a call from the Lord.
Such a difficult time in a young man's life is trying to discern, to decide, to try and hear that calling if it is there. That they might not be sure, and definitely a place to do it right there.
Yeah, quieting the mind and quieting the heart and the soul enough to be able to hear whatever may come to you it is difficult to do. And even though they're near, wherever their friends or family may be, they're just not immersed in that.
Right.
You know, they're not, you don't have roommates that are, doing whatever they may be doing or whatever. You know, they're people of like mind, and they're not distracted by their siblings or their, parents or whatever. So
and the idea is catching on too. I mean, we did the story, I guess it was a couple of weeks back now, about the women religious and wanting to possibly at some point in the future have a house of discernment for women as well. So it's an idea definitely that is catching on in the diocese.
I think anytime you're going to make a big life-changing decision, it's good to have that time. People take sabbaticals, when they're professors or they're, from work sometimes for a year, and sort of trying to think about maybe what their next career move might be, or sometimes people take a year off before they go to college because they want to sort of prepare. And although those are different from this, it's sort of the idea of preparing and, getting your mind around it.
Yeah, definitely. And there's the place to do it right there. Well, stay tuned. More Currents coming up straight ahead.
Just ahead, it's a lifetime commitment, and it takes a radical surrender. An author will explain.
Well, we just took you inside a house of discernment where men have a chance to figure out whether or not they're being called into the priesthood. But once men have made that decision and enter the seminary, they may still have some questions.
It's very true. And who better to answer those questions than a priest? Father Michael Najim from the Diocese of Providence, Rhode Island, has written a book called Radical Surrender, Letters to Seminarians. Why radical surrender? Well, I recently had a chance to find out when I spoke with Father Najim. And Father Najim is joining us now here on Currents. Father, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Matt, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You are, of course, the director of vocations in your diocese. So this book is obviously something that means a lot to you and is actually, as I understand, a compilation of letters that you've sent to seminarians through the years.
When I first got into seminary formation, I'm started my 6th year now. After about a year here, I thought to myself, it would be a good idea to be able to compile some advice for seminarians and put it into a book. A lot of people think when men come into the seminary that their spiritual life is all together. The truth is our spiritual lives will never be perfect. But I think a lot of people have the assumption that when a guy goes into the seminary, he's already making a holy hour every day, he's already got his spiritual life down. Well, the truth is that when guys come into the seminary, they certainly feel called by the Lord. They're good men. They feel called to holiness. But there's a lot of building that needs to be done. And so what I wanted to do was give them some advice on really the spiritual habits that they should be forming while they're in the seminary, which will be a great foundation for them in their priesthood.
And that's really, you talk about that's what seminary is really for, is, you might feel that calling, but you might not have it all together, as you say, and then you go to seminary for those years, and that's kind of what it is for, is really to prepare you for taking on the priesthood.
Really, the book is about helping these men to enter into a deeper friendship with Christ. The title, Radical Surrender, that's really what it's all about. It's really encouraging these men to say, look, if you're going to be a priest, you have to give everything to Christ, and the most important thing for us is to have a friendship with Christ so that we can invite people into that friendship with the Lord.
Now, what about those possible future seminarians, those that might be trying to discern a calling into the priesthood? What does this book have for them?
I think it would be very helpful to any man who's discerning the priesthood, because on the one hand, it kind of gives them an inside look into spiritual formation in the seminary. What are the things that we focus on while we're in seminary? On the one hand, I talk about aspects of the spiritual life that really any person can pick up this book and read. I talk about the Eucharist and devotion to Mary and spiritual direction and prayer, simplicity of life, that to which we're called as diocesan priests. I talk about celibacy and how to live it, the promise of obedience that we make at our ordination. And so any man who's interested in discerning a call to the priesthood, I think this would be helpful for him spiritually, helping him to enter into a deeper friendship with the Lord. But as I said, it will also give him an inside look into what spiritual formation is all about in the seminary.
Yeah. You know, it is a difficult thing. Actually, I went to a meeting that we have here in the Diocese of Brooklyn a couple of weeks ago called Project Andrew. And what it is basically an informational evening for those young men trying to discern a call, where they can meet with priests and seminarians and the bishop as well, and you know, just find out a little bit more about the priesthood and what it's like and what it's all about and what seminary is all about. And the bishop was telling me there's a lot of peer pressure, maybe from friends and others in your life. What is a young man to do if he's maybe not sure? Should he enter into seminary anyway?
I would say this: if a man is unsure, but he feels that the Lord may be calling him, one thing I would say to him is, you're never going to be 100% sure if you're supposed to go into the seminary. You may feel a strong inclination, but if he feels in some sense that, yes, I think God is calling me to this, the best place to discern his vocation is inside the building, you know, inside the seminary culture, inside the seminary, where he can immerse himself into formation. The Lord will make it clear to him if he's not called, but he can't lose by going into the seminary, you know, because if he is called, it's going to be clear and he's going to be at peace. If the Lord wants to show him otherwise, he's going to know that as well.
Right. Well, the book, of course, just came out last month, I believe, and in the middle of the year for priests, so I don't think there's any coincidence there.
I'm very excited about that. You know, I think it's a great grace. This year for priests is so special for us as priests, calling us to spiritual renewal. But I think it's a grace for the whole church, you know, because it's so important for us to have a deep love and respect for the gift of the priesthood that Christ has given to the church. So I pray that even my brother priests hopefully be able to get something out of this book as well.
Okay. Well, Father Najim, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us.
Thank you, Matt. God bless you.
We appreciate it. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Having a friendship with Christ.
There you go. And also having a friendship with other people who are of like mind, like we were just talking about with the House of Discernment. And this book is actually, as he said, letters that he's written to seminarians through the years, full of advice and full of help for them. So generally speaking, someone who is trying to discern a call or someone who's in seminary right now could look in this book and find something that's going to apply to them, because a lot of the experiences are going to be similar. No two are the same, of course, but a lot of them might be very similar.
Sort of a Q&A. I mean, you know,
right.
what are some of the things that might be on your mind? And, you know, he brought up a couple of the points, like, you know, how do you foster that friendship with Christ? That, you know, questions about celibacy and things that might actually, you know, be very valid things that people maybe don't want to bring up or talk about.
It's like the FAQ of the
the FAQ. That's what I was trying to say.
There you go.
You found the term.
It's one of those high-tech internet terms, you know. We'll stay tuned. There's more Currents coming up straight ahead.
When we return, a side of Bishop DiMarzio you may not know.
It never really becomes routine. As you grow older, as you deepen your spiritual life, I think it becomes even more meaningful.
Well, finally, on a night when we're taking a close look at the priesthood, we're going to hear from a man who's been a priest for almost 40 years.
He was born in Newark, New Jersey, and was an auxiliary bishop in the archdiocese there before being named the Bishop of Camden.
Do you know who we're talking about yet? A little more than 6 years ago, he made his way to this city of churches and was installed as the 7th Bishop of Brooklyn.
If you haven't figured it out yet.
Right. No more hints. I'm just going to tell you.
Tonight, Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio tells his story and shares a side of himself that you may not know as our eyewitness.
To be a priest in today's world is no different than it's been over the centuries. The priest's job is to bring people to God. I guess the story of vocation starts as a very young boy. I lived right across the street from the church. My confirmation, I got pushed ahead because I was in the 5th grade. I should have waited to the 7th grade, but since I knew my catechism so well, Sister said I could go ahead and get my confirmation in the 5th grade. So I was promoted at that time. So I even was excelling then in my understanding of Christian doctrine. It's hard to say if there was any one moment that convinced me. that I should be a priest. And I think it was just a day-by-day affirmation that you had a vocation, and that's what God wanted you to do. The priest, his first Mass is a special time. It's something you never will forget. It was a significant time in my life, and I remember it as if it was yesterday, and it was 40 years ago now. It was the Feast of Corpus Christi, which was a wonderful day to have a first Mass, the Feast of the Body and Blood of Christ. And I had my Mass in Sacred Heart Cathedral, where I was ordained, and where I received my confirmation. So it was very special to me to be in the same parish and in the cathedral. Thank you. I've basically had in 40 years 10 different assignments. So that's a lot of moving around, believe me. To be transferred from one diocese to another is like being transferred from one parish to another, except that the priests have an option to say, yes, I think I'd like to think about it, or maybe I'm not sure I can do this. The bishops are the most obedient of priests. We have no choice whatsoever. We just say, aye, aye, sir, and we take off. So it was a little bit of a surprise when I was asked to come to Brooklyn. But it's been a very happy transfer, and I've taken to it, I think, as a duck to water. So I'm doing my best, and I'm paddling pretty fast. The sacramental life that the bishop can exercise is different from the priest, but it exists. Contact with people is constant, so it's at a different level, but it is the same work as the priest. The bishop's work is not that much different. The people become the sounding board. They become the inspiration. That's what priests live for, to serve their people. During this year of the priest that we celebrate now, the Holy Father's asked the people to appreciate what the priesthood is, at the same time to ask the priest to be more conscious of what their responsibilities are and fulfill them with greater love and devotion. I think people have to come to the aid of the priests, first of all by prayer, and then by support, and then maybe perhaps by taking on some of these external forces that are so negative. People really do have to speak out about how they see their church portrayed and how they see their priests portrayed. The body of Christ. To me, the Eucharist means union with Christ in a way that is not possible except through the Eucharist. It's not just a function that we perform as a priest, it is the center of our lives. 40 years, 365 days a year, how many Masses is that? It never really becomes routine. As you grow older, as you deepen your spiritual life, I think it becomes even more meaningful. Okay. I think everyone in their life would say, well, what if I didn't do this or I did something else? But it doesn't last long, because you see what you've accomplished and what you mean to people and the real meaning of the priesthood. So hopefully my ministry is one that deals with people. Maybe to say that he was the people's bishop was a wonderful epitaph if I had a right one. So that would make me satisfied.
I love his chuckle.
Yeah, it's a very distinct chuckle that he has there. It's nice to see, because we often see Bishop DiMarzio. He'll come into the studio, or we'll see him out, and it's kind of a one-on-one thing. But it's nice to see him with the people there, which is often a context, I think, that we kind of bring a unique view to him, I guess, because we often see him one-on-one. But to see him with the people and really see that that's his calling, and that's where he is, and that's where he belongs.
Yeah, he's most at home, with the babies and with the, mommies, and it's funny. I was thinking about it earlier when I was watching the piece, because he'll celebrate so many Masses, and maybe doesn't have as much of an opportunity to interact, as one-on-one as he may have used to, and it's nice to see, especially around this time of year, that he is, still doing great, especially after this summer. So
yeah, it was cool to see how much he looks like his dad too. In
yes.
that picture, he looks a lot like his dad.
He does.
But anyway, that is it for this special edition of Currents. Remember, you can always catch us online. All you have to do, head over to currentsny.net.
And you can get quicker updates by following us on Twitter, if you know what that is, at twitter.com/currentsny. You can tweet with us. Well, for all of us here at Currents, I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.